Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is Monday, February 15th. Hopefully everybody out there enjoyed a happy Valentine's Day Sunday, whether or not you're celebrating Monday here or you have a Galentine's Day going on. I remember that one from the series New Girl, or a Men's Valentine's Day, whatever you guys are celebrating out there. Hopefully you had yourself some fun. You're enjoying the weekend as we are creeping ever so closely to pitchers and catchers reporting here for duty in the middle of this next week. By the time I talk to you guys again on Thursday, we're going to have report dates to discuss, finally talk about what's going on the field for Major League Baseball. So I cannot wait for that. But once again, thanks you guys for tuning in. So we got a great episode lined up for you here today. Here in segment number 1, we're going to talk a little bit about minor league baseball. I know I've discussed with you guys in the past kind of what's going on, but things have finalized. So we're going to discuss that. Then we'll talk about some signings, trades, rumors, and then wrap up the episode with my NL East predictions and previews for today's show. So let's jump right in here. Segment number 1, giving you guys a minor league update. Well, it was recently released that everything has been finalized for the minor league season for 2021. Last I talked to you guys, probably about a month ago now, about affiliations. There were some independent ball teams coming in, some teams dropping out of affiliations. Well, we got ourselves a finalized list that I'm going to read off for everybody here. It's going to be a bit monotonous, a little bit of detail, but I think you guys are going to enjoy that part. So some of the big changes, of course, Major League Baseball now owns and operates the minor league baseball operations. So they will no longer be independent financially when it comes to running the team and cost and all of that good stuff. So now there is a little bit more sustainability happening at the minor league level. And throughout these wholesale changes, a couple of the big bullet points to hit on here is AAA affiliates for Major League Ball clubs will now, on average, be 200 miles closer to their parent clubs. And there are some teams where this didn't change at all. You know, they still have their same AAA team, and then there were others where there are completely new affiliations and associations, but on average, they'll be about 200 miles closer to the big league club, which, of course, I always thought made sense. I always liked the way the Phillies did it, having every team up here within about an hour, hour and a half driving distance. So AAA call-ups didn't have to hop on a plane to try to get to the big league club by the end of the day, and it certainly makes things a lot more accessible moving forward. With that, there were, of course, facilities and work conditions that needed to be upgraded, improved, and modernized to 2020, 2021 standards, and basically that professional level, because there were a lot of old organizations that have been around for quite some time that maybe don't have the revenue to complete an upgrade or to get the training staff what they need, or the locker rooms or housing situations improved. So a lot of that will be upgraded and updated here moving forward. Due to the travel being closer, there will obviously be a lot of less in-season travel. They are going to extend the series. Now, I don't know if this is here to stay or just due to coronavirus in 2021, but it looks like they will do 6-game series instead of 2 or 3 game series to cut travel costs, to limit safety precautions in regards to changing city to city, hotel to hotel. So Essentially, these series are going to be 6 games in length, and teams will be traveling about once a week here instead of 2 to 3 times, which has been the standard in years past. There will also be a realigning of the divisions at each level. At the AAA level, there are going to be 2 conferences, is probably the best way to put it. They're calling them divisions, but think NL, AL at the big league level. So there's going to be 2 conferences at AAA, and then 3 conferences at the AA level, the high A level, and then the low A level. Because, again, there's going to be 4 teams instead of what was 6 or 7. You know, you had low A, middle A, high A, rookie ball. So there's going to be AAA, AA, high A, low A, and then an extended spring training rookie ball entry level type of opportunity as well. So 2 conferences at AAA, 3 conferences for AA, high A, and low A. These will break down to divisions. They are still trying to figure out the names of these divisions, whether or not they're going to stay with the International League and Pacific League at the AAA level, because right now they're basically going East, West, Northeast, Midwest type of conversations when it comes to the divisional aspects of things, as well as there's going to be an increase in salary, and these increases are for all 4 levels of the minor league system, anywhere from 38% to 72% increase for cost of living for these individuals. And I was able to find some specific numbers where rookie ball level minimum wages will go from $290 up to $400, and this is a per week minimum amount paid out to the players. So they're going to go from $290 to $400. The low A and high A level will go from a minimum of $290 up to $500 per week. So that's one of the big jumps there when it comes to progression and how much people are being paid. At the AA level, you have a minimum of $350 going all the way up to $600. And then at the AAA level, it goes from $502 up to $700. So they pretty much picked uniform amounts of money, going from $400 at rookie ball, $500 at A ball, $600 at the AA level, and then $700 at the AAA level when it comes to weekly minimums for these players. So multiply those by 4, get yourself a standard amount of a monthly allowance, and certainly going from $290 to $500 at the A-ball level is going to be a big jump for those guys, and $350 to $600 being very, very similar. Now, this gets a little bit fuzzy when you get to AAA. Are they on the 40-man roster? Do they have a major league contract option? Of course, they could get paid a lot more money. So this is just on the minimum side of things to take care of that lower level of employees, because a lot of times people had problems with the amounts that they were getting paid. Minor league players would have to get secondary jobs during the offseason, even during the season sometimes, driving Uber during their off time. So this will alleviate some of the cost of living concerns that are currently taking place out there across minor league baseball. So definitely a shout out to MLB for upping the pay. That is something that needed to be done, because these guys were on the buses for hours, staying in cheap hotels, and certainly making barely above minimum wage for the amount of time that they were putting in, for only getting about $300 a week. So it's nice to see that those dollar amounts are increasing. Now, for 2021, the length of season is still to be determined here a little bit due to the pandemic and the coronavirus. But for a standard summer, the AAA level will be playing 144 games. The AA level will be at 138 games. And the single A level will be at 132. So a longer season for everybody in the minors, certainly getting them ready for the 162. That is the major league level, and I'm a fan of that as well. So 144 at AAA, 138 at AA, and 132 at the single A level is the length of the season when it comes to the amount of games played. And again, due to these longer series, less travel is involved for those number of games throughout the course of the summer. And those are the big kind of takeaways, the notes that we've been given thus far here during press releases from Major League Baseball as they continue to kind of navigate and manipulate certain dates, activities with health and safety protocols and COVID happening here. But when things hopefully get back to standard summer in 2022. Those are going to be the lengths and the pays of everybody at those levels. So now I want to run through a list of all the affiliations for the teams out there. Like I said, this is going to be a bit monotonous, but wherever you're a fan of out there, listen in because there could be some changes, maybe not when it comes to your particular team. There were at least a handful out there that have made some changes, so I wanted to read these to you guys just so you're aware of your team's new affiliations here moving forward. So we'll jump around baseball starting out in the American League East. We'll kind of go division by division and let you guys know who is still associated with your ball club. So starting out with the Toronto Blue Jays, their AAA team is the Buffalo Bisons. AA is the New Hampshire Fisher Cats. High A will be the Vancouver Canadians, and then Low A will be the Dundon Blue Jays. And you'll come to find out Low A is a lot of that spring training type of facilities where people are playing, but Buffalo, New Hampshire, Vancouver, and Dundon will be associated with Toronto. I'll read these from AAA down to single A level. That way I don't have to repeat it every time. So the Baltimore Orioles, they will have the Norfolk Tides, the Bowie Bay Sox, the Aberdeen Ironbirds, and the Delmarva Shorebirds as their 4 teams that are associated with the Orioles, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Durham Bulls, Montgomery Biscuits, Bowling Green Hot Rods, and Charleston River Dogs. Big fan of those nicknames there, Hot Rods, River Dogs, Biscuits, but the Durham Bulls stay with Tampa Bay there at the AAA level. The Red Sox will have the Worcester Red Sox, Portland Sea Dogs, Greenville Drive, and the Salem Red Sox as their 4 associates. And lastly, here we have the New York Yankees with the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Raiders, the Somerset Patriots, the Hudson Valley Renegades, and the Tampa Tarpons are the guys associated with the Yankees now, so they stick with Scranton Wilkes-Barre. Now going over to the American League Central, we have the Cleveland Indians, Columbus Clippers, Akron Rubber Ducks, Lake County Captains, and Lynchburg Hillcats. So the Columbus Clippers stay with the Indians there. The Royals, their association, will have Omaha Storm Chasers, Northwest Arkansas Naturals, Quad City River Bandits, and Columbia Fireflies. So not sure how that stays with the Royals' past history, but Omaha and Arkansas now associated with Kansas City. The Detroit Tigers, they have the Toledo Mud Hens, the Erie Sea Wolves, West Michigan Whitecaps, and Lakeland Flying Tigers as their 4 minor league teams. The Minnesota Twins, this was one of the big changes at the AAA level. The St. Paul Saints go from independent to AAA. Wichita Wind Surge, Cedar Rapids Colonels, and Fort Myers Mighty Muscles as the teams now associated with the Twins. So Twins fans, a few changes there in regards to your updates. The White Sox, they have the Charlotte Knights, the Birmingham Barons, Winston-Salem Dash, and Kannapolis Cannonballers. So Charlotte and Chicago, probably one of the further AAA to big league level associations there. Now jumping out west to the American League West, we have the Oakland A's, the Las Vegas Aviators, the Midland Rockhounds, Lansing Lugnuts, and Stockton Ports will be the 4 teams associated with the A's. Now we have the Angels with the Salt Lake Bees, Rocket City Trash Pandas, fantastic name there, don't even know where Rocket City is, Tri-City Dust Devils, and Inland Empire 66ers. So far right now, the Angels, as a core of 4 there, have the best nicknames across the board. The Astros will have the Sugarland Skeeters, Corpus Christi Hooks, Asheville Tourists, and Fayetteville Woodpeckers as their minor league teams. Now the Seattle Mariners have the Tacoma Rainers, Arkansas Travelers, Everett Aqua Sox, and Modesto Nuts. So the AA team there in Arkansas, quite a bit of ways from Seattle. Now the Texas Rangers, Round Rock Express, Frisco Rough Riders, Hickory Crawdads, and Down East Wood Ducks as the 4 for them across the American League West. Now going over to the National League in the East, starting out with the Braves, they have the Gwinnett Stripers, Mississippi Braves, Rome Braves, and the Augusta Green Jackets. Of course, a golf reference there to the Masters in Augusta for the Braves. The Marlins, they have the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, the Pensacola Blue Wahoos, the Beloit Snappers, and the Jupiter Hammerheads there for the Marlins. The Mets have the Syracuse Mets, which is a new AAA for them, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the Brooklyn Cyclones, and the St. Lucie Mets as their 4 associations. The Nationals now have the Rochester Red Wings, formerly of the Twins, Harrisburg Senators, Wilmington Blue Rocks, and the Fredericksburg Nationals for their 4 teams. The Philadelphia Phillies have the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, the Reading Fightin' Phils, Jersey Shore Blue Claws, and the Clearwater Threshers as their association. Now going over to the National League Central, the Brewers, AAA, Nashville Sounds, the Biloxi Shuckers, the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers, and the Carolina Mudcats as their high A association, or low A association. The Cardinals, the Memphis Redbirds, Springfield Cardinals, Peoria Chiefs, and Palm Beach Cardinals. The Chicago Cubs, they have the Iowa Cubs, the Tennessee Smokies, South Bend Cubs, and Myrtle Beach Pelicans. The Pittsburgh Pirates will have the Indianapolis Indians, the Altoona Curve, the Greensboro Grasshoppers, and the Bradenton Marauders as their 4 associations. The Reds here have the Louisville Bats, the Chattanooga Lookouts, the Dayton Dragons, and the Daytona Tortugas as their 4 associations. And now wrap it up here with the National League West. We have the Diamondbacks, the Reno Aces, Amarillo Sod Poodles, Hillsboro Hops, and Physalia Rawhide as their 4. The Dodgers will go with the Oklahoma City Dodgers. That's the furthest AAA from LA to Oklahoma City. The Tulsa Drillers, Great Lakes Loons, and Rancho Cucamonga Quakes as their 4. The Giants will go with the Sacramento River Cats, Richmond Flying Squirrels, that's far from AA, out to the West Coast, East Coast to West Coast. Eugene Emeralds, San Jose Giants. The San Diego Padres will have El Paso Chihuahuas. I don't even know that one, sorry. San Antonio Missions, Fort Wayne Tin Caps, and Lake Elsinore Storm. And last but not least, the Colorado Rockies. They don't have nicknames with them, but AAA will be in Albuquerque, AA in Hartford, High A in Spokane, and Low A in Fresno. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. You're now up to date with all of your associations and where their teams will be. Some have more travel than others, but overall, certainly an upgrade on what it has been in years past. But that'll do it here for segment number 1 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside here now for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we'll talk about the latest signings across Major League Baseball. Things are starting to pick up here now that we're a week away from teams reporting. Stick around, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back, and thanks again for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. If you guys haven't checked us out on social media yet, please do me a favor. Head over to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I know I ask you guys pretty much every episode here, but it really does help us continue to spread the word, continue to grow as a podcast network, both the baseball podcast as well as the podcast network. The baseball podcast will keep you guys up to date with everything that's going on out there across baseball, the latest signings, rumors, and as we head into spring training here, things are certainly going to pick up in regards to potential injuries, what's going on, who's making certain rotations, who's making the team, who's getting cut. So those social media pages will keep you guys up to date with everything. And then the podcast network pages will keep you guys up to date with everything going on. News, politics, movies, whatever it is. Check out both pages, and that way you guys can stay up to date with everything that's happening in the world here today because, of course, there's a lot going on across all walks of life in regards to 2021 here. So now that we wrapped up our minor league conversation, let's jump into our major league level signings that have taken place here over the last 72 hours or so. And there were certainly a flurry of moves, as well as, like I mentioned previously, I like to discuss the major league level contracts with you guys, but there have been an absolute ton of minor league level deals signed here recently, whether it's kind of veterans still trying to stick around in the league. Jay Bruce, New York Yankees, agree to a minor league level deal. I'm sure he'll get time up in the big leagues. And there are a handful of others like that, of names that you would recognize that are signing basically minor league level deals with invites to spring training, which gives those teams a bit of flexibility when it comes to those guys making the team. They're not guaranteed because major league level contracts are guaranteed, but if they have a nice spring, show that they can be healthy, still contribute, a lot of these guys are going to make ball clubs. So if you want to stay up to date with everything on your team, I implore you to go to Google, go to Twitter, type in the name of your team and minor league signings or minor league, and you're going to see a few names there that you may have missed when it comes to just watching ESPN or reading the newspaper, if that's something you still do out there today. So, discussing the major league level deals that have taken place here over the past couple of days. The biggest one, obviously, to report is the return of Justin Turner to the Dodgers. And I was honestly very surprised with this one. I discussed with you guys after they signed Bauer that I didn't think there was any way that Justin Turner was going to be back just based on the amount of money that he wanted. And this is just showing that the Dodgers, after winning the World Series, of course, they got a ton of revenue income, I'm sure, from all that merchandise and apparel that was sold because it was their first one since 1988. And they anticipate having fans back here the next year. So they are still in championship mode and go for it mode. And they signed Turner back for a 2-year, $34 million deal guaranteed. Now, he could make a bit more money due to incentives. There was, I believe, a mutual option for a third year there that could push it closer to $50 million. And for a guy at the age of 36 to get 2, potentially 3 years is a great move for the player here. Now, it has come out that the Brewers made a very serious push for Justin Turner. They basically offered him the same contract, 2 and 34, but the Dodgers gave him a few more incentives, the mutual option, but it was not due to the lack of effort on behalf of the Brewers to bring in Justin Turner. It just basically come down to what I was telling you guys about, that Turner wanted to compete for a World Series. At this point in his career, he really wanted to make the playoffs, get back to October, and I don't think Milwaukee's going to be in that position this year. So even if he takes a few less $1 million up front from the Dodgers, he knows the clubhouse, he knows L.A., he was obviously a big guy in regards to bringing that World Series to L.A., so he has that comfortability with the Dodgers, and he goes back. Now, this does put their salary cap, or, again, that's taboo, so luxury tax over that $250 million mark, which is the next level of salary cap in regards to interest that you have to pay. And if they were to finish the year over $250, I believe it's almost like 30% on every dollar, because it's about 15 once you get over $210. And you also get docked 10 position places in the draft when it comes to spending that much money. So I do anticipate a move being made here by the Dodgers to potentially relieve some of that salary. Whether that's before the year starts, I don't think so, since we're about a week away. But when it comes to trade deadline time, I wouldn't be surprised if they trade off a bench piece or maybe a bullpen guy who's making $5, $6, $7 million to try to get under that 250 and preserve that draft pick wherever it may fall based on where they finish this year. But Turner to the Dodgers just fills any hole that they may have as an entire team. I know I gave you guys my preview and I said third base is really only the area they're lacking. Well, not anymore. Turner right around 300 batting average wise here the past couple of years. So they fill that hole, and the Dodgers are now firmly the team to beat, not only across the National League, but all of baseball. So fascinating move by the Dodgers, telling everybody, hey, we're not going anywhere, at least for a year or two. Then a lot of money starts to come off the books for them, and they can reevaluate their window and which players they're going to move forward with. But for the next year, 2 years, pencil in the Dodgers as that champion out there in the NL West and potentially in the World Series representing the National League. Next on the list here, we have James Paxton. He signed a 1-year, $8.5 million deal, or it is reported. A lot of these, again, still pending physicals and, have not officially been announced by the ball clubs. But a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with the Mariners. And I like what the Mariners are doing here. They're kind of coming in late, being very... getting great value when it comes to spending money. They had traded Tyjon Walker last year, got some prospects. They surprised a little bit. I talked to you guys during my predictions that this could be the team that could jump up and surprise in the American League, especially in the West, being a bit up for grabs. Houston losing some guys. The Angels never really show up. Perhaps the Mariners find themselves in an area where they're going, hey, we could win some games here if we spend a little bit more money. So left-handed starter James Paxton, very good over his career. They also signed Ken Giles to a 2-year deal. The money has yet to be announced in regards to that deal. Giles is coming off a Tommy John surgery, a bit of a head case potentially, but has fantastic stuff. I mean, mid to high 90s, used to touch 100 here during his time in Philadelphia. So if he comes back to form, he could be nasty out of the bullpen. So they had a late inning arm. He has closing experience. He's played in big markets. He's thrown in big games. Same with James Paxton, of course, coming over from the Bronx, now going out west to the Northwest where they can kind of filter in, and the coverage and exposure isn't that great. So adding Giles and Paxton to that Mariners team, I really like those moves for the Mariners trying to get into that second place spot, I think, behind the Astros out in the West, because the A's have lost guys. So fascinating moves by the Mariners, potentially trying to seize a bit of an opportunity here moving forward and jump up into that wild card conversation. We have Rich Hill signing a 1-year, $2.5 million deal with the Rays. The Rays are adding a lot of veteran arms to their rotation. They added Waka, they add Hill to kind of counterset the losses of Blake Snell and Charlie Morton. And man, this is going to be interesting because Hill was still very good last year in Minnesota. And if he can go down and have that success in Tampa, potentially they are that second unit coming out of the American League East. Behind the Yankees, who are divisional favorites. And, the Orioles not so good. The Red Sox not so good. Them in Toronto kind of battling for that second place spot, I think is going to be a fascinating competition to watch here over the course of the summer. And I like Rich Hill. Yes, he's 40-plus years old, but he proved last year he could still get it done. Marwin Gonzalez signed a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Red Sox. He's a utility guy, could fill in the outfield, could be in the infield, played a ton of different positions, struggled offensively last year, but for $3.5 million, I think that's a nice signing by Boston to give them a rotational piece, a utility piece to use all over the diamond. And shortly after Gonzalez went to the Red Sox, the Phillies countered that because the Phillies had interest in Gonzalez. They countered with the addition of Brad Miller, who last year spent time with the St. Louis Cardinals and for a number of weeks was the cleanup hitter in St. Louis. And 2 years ago, he was in Philadelphia. He had himself a nice year in 2019. So a lot of fans here happy with the addition of Brad Miller. And right after Gonzalez went somewhere else, they transitioned their focus and brought in Miller for that same $3.5 million compensation. And he'll play all over the yard for the Phillies. The Phillies also added Brandon Kinsler the closer for the Miami Marlins last year. Now, they added him on a minor league level deal, but it is pretty much guaranteed that he's going to make the big league club because apparently it was reported he turned down major league offers for other teams. But he worked with Bryce Harper, who they knew during their time in Washington. Kinsler had success in Minnesota. So the guy's 90, 92, 93 miles an hour sinker ball. Doesn't strike a lot of people out. Had a relatively high walk rate, but the lowest average of any relief pitcher with runners in scoring position. So certainly knows how to pitch out of jams, and he'll be a nice piece to that bullpen as the Phillies continue to overhaul what was the worst bullpen in the history of baseball last year. So Miller and Kinsler to the Phillies, and some nice moves that probably round out their offseason with them being right up against the luxury tax of $210 here in Philadelphia. A handful of other moves. We have David Phelps, right-handed pitcher formerly of the Phillies, relief pitcher, going to the Blue Jays. 1 year, $1.75 million. He was very effective during his time before Philadelphia. He came over from Boston, but even before that, I believe it was Milwaukee, he found success. So hopefully they feel he can get back to that routine, and what happened during those 20, 30, 40 games here in Philadelphia was an anomaly and kind of an outlier when it comes to his career progression and trajectory. But another big one was relief pitcher Mark Melancon from the Atlanta Braves, going to the San Diego Padres. So the Padres, they're not standing by and letting Turner, the Dodgers, Bauer kind of cause them some pause in regards to their moves. Melancon last year was still very good. He's coming off a 4-year, $60-some million agreement, which at the time was one of the largest for a relief pitcher in baseball history. He dealt with some injuries in 17, 18, but the last 2 years, 19 and 20, he found himself getting back to form down there in Atlanta, of course, previously in Pittsburgh during a point of his career. So terms and years not yet available for that deal, but San Diego continues to go with late inning options. They got Pomeranz out there, Richards, a couple of other guys who could close games. You're throwing Melancon into that bullpen. Just another solid arm coming out there for San Diego. Next, we have Jake Arrieta. I was all over it. I said $3.57 million for Jake. Well, he got a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Cubs. So he goes from making $25 million a year with the Phillies to $6 million with the Cubbies and returning home to Chicago, where there was a time when he was the most dominant pitcher on the planet. I mean, a number of starts. He had a no-hitter in there. I think it was like 10-1 over the course of 3 months or something like that. So Jake Arrieta, the Cubs, taking a flyer on each other, hoping that they can get a handful of starts out of him. Certainly a value add there, low risk, high reward, because if the guy falls completely off and can't get it done, $6 million, kind of no harm, no foul, especially since they've been cutting salary and trying to find value around the edges when it comes to adding people to the 2021 season for them. These last three guys, kind of lower-level names, but still finding opportunities across the board. You have outfielder Nomar Mazara, who signed with the Detroit Tigers. Again, the Tigers adding veteran-level talent to bring along that prospect list, that younger team, showing them what it's like to be a professional hitter. Adding Robbie Grossman. You, of course, have Cabrera there. So Mazara adds another professional bat to Detroit. Then you have the Cleveland Indians adding outfielder Billy Hamilton. Everybody remembers Hamilton, the speedster, the guy who was supposed to steal a ton of bags, could be the best to ever do it since Ricky Henderson, and, really hasn't found his stroke offensively to be able to become an everyday style of player, especially during his time in Kansas City when he was one of the top overall prospects in baseball. But the Indians, for $1 million, are saying, hey, yeah, give me that pinch runner late in games. Or extra inning rule, guy on second, whoever the last out was, well, we're just going to pinch run Billy Hamilton, put him out there. Maybe he steals third base instead of having to bunt him over, or a sac fly type of opportunity will score him. And then the last one to report on here is infielder Asdrubal Cabrera, the left-handed hitter, shortstop, second baseman. He signs a 1-year deal for $1.75 with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So the Diamondbacks add a veteran piece out there out west. Like I said, unfortunately for the other three teams in the NL West, like the Giants, D-backs, and Rockies, you're looking up at the Padres and Dodgers going, man, these guys are just a tier above all of us here. I don't know if we have a shot at this second wild card just because these guys are going to beat us up. But Cabrera continues to find work here. He was in Philly. He was with New York. He's bounced around with Washington. So he continues to find a job with the Diamondbacks for 1.75 here in the 2021 season. But that'll do it here for segment number 2 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. What we'll do now is we'll step aside for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we got a couple of trades to discuss with you guys. 3 trades went down over the past 72 hours, one of them involving a key piece from the Red Sox, as well as I'm going to keep you guys up to date with all the rumors continuing to happen out there. So stick around, everybody. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be back right after this.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thanks again for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. It is Monday, February 15th. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hopefully you had yourselves a fantastic Valentine's Day, whether you celebrated over the weekend or you're doing so here now early during the week. If you can enjoy outdoor dining, wherever you may be, got yourself a meal or stayed in, watched a movie, whatever you did to celebrate. Hopefully everything went well for you out there as you continue to stay safe and navigate 2021 here and the coronavirus pandemic that we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here. Vaccinations continuing to go up, cases, deaths, everything continuing to go down. So certainly feels like we're on the back nine here, at least fingers crossed. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it here at all. But if you guys haven't checked out other shows within the podcast network, wherever you're listening to this, Google Play, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, Pandora, Spotify, type in GSMC into that little search icon, hit that magnifying glass, and you'll get about 20 different shows within the network that all have fantastic content, whether it's health and fitness, other sports, cars, books, news, whatever you're into. There's a podcast out there for you that'll keep you guys up to date with everything going on or give you new tricks, tidbits to learn here as we all continue to improve here day by day. But segment number 3 of the baseball podcast here, we're going to discuss the latest trades happening as well as get you guys up to date with all the rumors taking place out there. There were 3 trades over the past couple of days. The biggest one, I'm sure you guys heard, was Andrew Benintendi being traded from the Boston Red Sox, and he's ultimately landing with the Kansas City Royals. And this was a bit of a fascinating move by the Royals because it is a bit of a win-now approach for Kansas City. And with Chicago, Minnesota, Cleveland still having the kind of the hold there on the AL Central, I thought this was a bit interesting from the Royals. But they did get some cash with Benintendi's contract to help upset the cost. So I think that was a big to-do there for the Royals. But they get themselves an everyday left fielder. And for a number of years there, it looked like he was going to be part of that next window in Boston to win their championship. I mean, last year he got hurt, so he didn't play a lot. But as recently as 2018, the guy had 16 home runs, 87 RBIs, and hit .290. 2017, he had 20 home runs, 90 RBIs, 20 steals, hitting .271. So if you're going to get 20, 15, 85, 90 out of him, he had 20 steals, 21 steals, 10 steals. So anywhere from 10 to 20 home runs, 10 to 20 steals, playing a solid left field. He's known for his defense there as well. So Kansas City goes out and gets themselves a solid player, which, I really like Benintendi. I wanted the Phillies to be in on this conversation, but I guess the price ultimately was out of their reach because early in the process, they were looking for a major league level arm in Boston and then a potential bat in the minor league level deal, but they ended up getting or are going to receive 5 guys in this deal. It was a 3-team deal between the Royals, the Mets, and the Red Sox. The Royals, again, get Benintendi and some cash. The Mets were involved. They got outfielder Khalil Lee from Kansas City, who was ranked as the number 9 prospect for the Royals, which, looking at some of his sabermetrics, his spray charts, he uses the entire field and only 22 years old. He's from Newark, Delaware, so a Northeast guy. I think this is somebody that the Mets are going to be very happy with. At the minor league level, he's hit a career 256 as recent as 2019. He reached Double-A where he hit 264, 8 home runs, 51 RBIs. So a great athlete out there in the outfield, uses the entire field, should continue to develop, continue to progress, and, a top 10 prospect from the Royals going back to the Mets. So they basically get Benintendi, who's a solid everyday outfielder, and ship out Lee, saying, hey, we don't know if we're going to need this guy anymore because we had penciled him into left field, but it certainly seems like Benintendi's going to take that over. And now going over to the Red Sox, they have 5 players ultimately coming, 3 of them from Kansas City. The one guy we know is Franchy Cordero, who is an outfielder at the big league level. He's been a rotational guy during his career. The most games he's played is 40 back in 2018 with the San Diego Padres. He was with them for 3 years. Last year in Kansas City, struggled a little bit, hitting 211, but he had 7 home runs and 19 RBIs, hitting 237 for the Padres back in 2018. So I think Boston should pencil him into the outfield, kind of see what they have there as they continue their rebuild. But, a power guy, bats left-handed, throws right-handed, 6'3", 225. I think he could find a home out there by the monster out in left field for the Bo Sox. They also get 2 players to be named later from Kansas City. So we don't know who those guys are going to be yet. There isn't a timetable on when we're going to find out, but they'll eventually get 3 guys from Kansas City and then 2 guys from the Mets. And the guy we know of there is Josh Winkowski. And Winkowski was involved in the Seth Lugo trade from the Blue Jays organization. So he was only with the Mets for, about a month or so before ultimately they move on from him. But he is a starting pitcher who most recently in 2019 was at the high A level. So a few years away is Winkowski, but he was 4-5 with a 3.19 ERA. Career for his minor league level, he's 18-17 with a 3.35. So he's shown that he has the stuff to get people out. He continues to progress. I would anticipate him going to the Double-A level with the Red Sox here to start out 2021. And they also get a player to be named later from the Mets. So 2 guys we know of now, 3 players to be named later, which ultimately should make the Red Sox better in the future. But as of today, I certainly think they are worse. Moving on from Benintendi and only getting Cordero and Winkowski coming back to them in the trade. So the Royals make a surprise move, adding Benintendi. There were a bunch of contenders, but I guess they gave up what they needed, got the Mets involved, and ultimately were able to get the deal done. The next deal came between the Marlins and the Dodgers. This one involving 3 players ultimately. The Marlins adding pitcher Dylan Floro from the Dodgers. He was very good for them in the last 3 years out there in L.A. He had himself a 1.63 ERA, 4.24, and then 2.59. So his combined time there in L.A., he went 11-4 out of the bullpen with a 3.10 ERA. So the Marlins add a solid big league bullpen piece to try to fortify that pitching staff. They got a ton of prospects in the rotation. A lot of them could be on innings limits. Sixto Sanchez being one of the big ones where I don't know if they're going to let him ride a full 200 innings, so you could see a lot of 5-inning starts. So Miami trying to add to that bullpen, and they get a nice piece by Floro there coming back to him. And they send the Dodgers a couple of different prospects. The big one being Alex Forsythe. 24-year-old. He'll go back to L.A. He is a pitcher as well. He made his major league debut in 2020. It did not go fantastic. He appeared in 5 games, was 0-1 with an 18.69 ERA in 4 innings. So before that, though, the highest level he had been was Double-A, where he actually threw 16 scoreless innings for Jacksonville there in the Marlins organization. So it is a big jump from Double-A to the big leagues. I think L.A. will put him into that Triple-A world, try to continue to let him develop, but he's obviously shown some things over his minor league career. He's got a 1.62 ERA in his 11-2, and then that jumps to 18.69 in 4 innings at the big league level. But of course, hadn't pitched above Double-A before Miami gave him a shot, so could use a bit more seasoning there at the Triple-A level this summer. They also get right-handed pitcher Kyle Hurt, who was a 5th-round pick in 2020 for the Marlins, so he doesn't have any minor league stats to discuss, of course, with last year being canceled, but a 5th-rounder has a ton of upside, and again, the Dodgers looking a bit more here toward the future when it comes to their bullpen and continuing that machine, as they may lose Jansen, Gratterall, some of these other guys as they have to get paid or head towards retirement. This next window of bullpen pieces could be coming in for them. And the last trade we have also involves the Dodgers. The Dodgers were busy when it came to trades here. The Dodgers added in this trade, they traded with the Oakland A's, so they add infielder Sheldon Noose to the ball club. And Sheldon didn't play in 2020, but was with Oakland at the big league level in 2019. He hit .250 over the course of 61 plate appearances. Had 3 doubles, no home runs, 7 RBIs, but a nice value piece that the Dodgers once again will probably put to the AAA level. He was the number 5th rated prospect in the A's system. Did not, again, crack the team last year in 2020, but certainly has a ton of upside to potentially help the Dodgers out in the future. And the Dodgers also added Gus Varland, who is a starting pitcher from the A's organization. He was their 28th ranked prospect, and he had only reached high A ball when it comes to 2019. So he'll find himself at that high A, Double-A level, not contributing at the big league level this year. But again, the Dodgers trying to fill that pipeline for the future coming up. And then the A's, on the flip side, they receive a couple of arms themselves. They get a big league level relief pitcher, Adam Kolarek, who was very good for the Dodgers last year during the regular season. Struggled a bit when it came to the postseason, but his time with the Dodgers has been fantastic. He was traded over from Tampa Bay in 2019. So during his time with the Dodgers, he's a combined 5-0 with a .88 ERA over the course of 30 innings. And before that with Tampa Bay, 4.19 ERA. So very good big league level pitcher. He's been with 2 great organizations, knows how to get people out, knows what he's doing. And the A's needed to add some bullpen pieces after they lose Hendricks, a few other guys out there. So I like that move from Oakland's perspective. They get a big league level guy, and then they added outfielder Cody Thomas, who was the 29th ranked prospect when it came to the Dodgers organization. So basically they go reliever for middle infield prospect and then switch lower level prospects. And Cody was recently at the Double-A level in 2019 where he hit .236 with 23 home runs and 76 RBIs. Now in the Texas League down there, the ball does fly, but obviously taking advantage of that to the tune of 23 home runs. You still got to make contact and you still got to hit the ball hard. So nice work there by Cody. But that wraps up the 3 trades that also took place here over the past couple of days. Now I want to talk to you guys a bit about some of the rumors taking place out there as teams are trying to finalize their rosters heading into spring training here. The New York Mets are apparently in the starting pitching market. They were in on James Paxton before he ultimately decided to join the Mariners out west. So the Mets may now turn their attention to Taijuan Walker and Jake Odorizzi because the Mets missed out on Bauer, still looking to add starters, add depth. And, Walker and Odorizzi are probably the 2 best pieces out there on the market right now. Walker's had Tommy John surgery, but he was very good during his time with the Mariners and then being traded last year to the Blue Jays, finishing with a 1.37 ERA with the Blue Jays over his final 6 starts. So he's coming into his free agency here on a high note, as opposed to Odorizzi, who was kind of plagued by injuries in 2020. He was only able to make 4 starts for the Twins to the tune of a 6.59 ERA. But if you reverse back to 2019, the guy had 30 starts and a 3.51 ERA. So he's been very good at the big league level, and the Mets are still on the starting pitching market, trying to add one more piece here before these guys report in the next couple of days. There's also a rumor out west the Giants are still looking to add starting pitching. They feel good about where their ball club is, but put them on the list that's interested in Odorizzi and Walker, as well as some other veterans potentially that they could add. Maybe a minor league deal here or there. They've already done this with Trevor Cahill and Tyson Ross, so they could look to add the value when it comes to adding a starter, but ultimately trying to find that piece that's ready to contribute at the big league level to fill in the rotation with the likes of Gausman, Cueto, and Wood out there, trying to find that number 4, number 5 starter. The Benintendi trade for the Red Sox here basically is confirming Jackie Bradley Jr. back to the Red Sox. 2 rival executives of the Red Sox now believe they are more likely than ever to sign Jackie Bradley Jr. because it just makes a ton of sense having an opening in the outfield. Yes, they added Cordero, but you bring back JBJ to play center field. He knows the terrain out there. He's been a streaky hitter, of course. He had 283 with 7 homers last year, but hasn't been up to that level quite to his entire career. So he could be interested in the Mets still, but it does seem to be that the industry believes he'll be headed back to the Red Sox here. And then the last rumors to talk about is the Mets. The Mets have had conversations about third baseman Chris Bryant with the Cubs, as well as the Oakland A's Matt Chapman. But MLB.com John Paul Morrissey doesn't believe that any deal is imminent or will happen by the time the year starts. The asking price for those 2 guys is just too high for the Mets, according to feedback on the situation. And honestly, people believe that could be a mid-season trade for the Mets as they try to cover up that hole at third base. That's really the only position they're not happy about from the offensive perspective. So the Mets still looking for pitching, still looking for offense, and still have money to spend. So it'll be fascinating to see how all that pans out. But that'll do it here for segment number 3 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll pause one last time here for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. But when we come back, I'm going to give you guys my National League East previews and predictions. Man, this one's a toss-up almost across the board. So stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Thanks for listening today, everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode, as we're going to wrap things up here with my previews and predictions for the National League East. And before I get into letting you guys know where I have everybody finishing, this has to be the toughest division to potentially predict moving forward. I mean, teams 1 through 5 could all be very good this year. I mean, last year, you look at the Marlins and you think to yourself, they're probably in the basement with everything going on just on paper, the roster as well. You forget that the Marlins made the postseason last year. Yeah, it was 60 games. It was a short sprint. Over the course of 162, things may have stabilized themselves and would have ended up in the basement, but It just goes to show you that any team in this division could get hot for a couple of months. And if somebody else has a historically worse bullpen in baseball, maybe they missed the playoffs when they should have absolutely made it. Because the Phillies had leads in 47 out of 60 games during the regular season. That was more than the Dodgers, more than the Yankees, more than the White Sox. That was the most out of any team in baseball last year. Having a lead at some point in the game, I believe the Phillies had that in 47 out of 60 games. And if you just, I guess, lose half of the games you blew, if you were just a bad bullpen, you would have easily qualified for the postseason. If they were below average, they would have qualified. Heck, if they had an average bullpen, they may have won the division. And this team on paper, has it gotten better or is it just the same? Where do we stand there? The Braves, when it comes to the projections out there online, if you Google NL East projections that have come out, MLB.com's talking about it. The projections have them winning like 80 games this year. This was a team that won 3 out of the first 4 games in the National League Championship Series. They had a 3-1 lead on the Dodgers last year, who ultimately came back and won the World Series. If their bullpen doesn't blow a handful of games, maybe they're winning the World Series. It's just fascinating. Then, of course, the Mets with all of their additions being made, but all the changes in the front office. They have a general manager. Now they don't have a general manager. They had a previous manager get accused of sexual assault or sexual allegations. So what's going on behind the scenes there? But yet on the field, on paper, they've added Lindor, they added Carrasco, they added McCann. They've gotten a heck of a lot better. So where do they finish? Not to mention you have the 2019 World Series champions. So the last time they played a full 162, this team won the World Series by winning 4 games on the road in the World Series. And they get Steven Strasburg back on paper. They get that rotation back healthy. So every one of these teams has an argument to be made that they could ultimately win this division. Now, I think some are stronger than others, but again, you just can't rule anybody out based on what's happened. I mean, the Marlins in the playoff last year, the Nationals won the World Series 2 years ago, the Phillies were arguably one of the best offenses in baseball, the Braves should have won the National League up 3-1, and the Mets have gotten unbelievably better this offseason. So, this division, you could argue with me for any particular team that you think they're going to win the division, and I probably won't fight you too hard on it. I mean, I'll certainly play devil's advocate and give you reasons to why I think somebody else is going to, but truly, 1 through 5, I think these could filter either way. Now, I do think the Marlins finish in the basement, all right? I think they are the 5th place team. I think over the course of 162, the offense down there in Miami isn't going to show up. The bullpen probably isn't to the point where you need it to be. I do like the rotation. They are young. They are fantastic. You have Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez, one of the best young pitchers in all of baseball. I still hate the fact that the Phillies had to include him to get Real Muto. But now that they re-signed Real Muto, there should be less panic here in Philadelphia, because if we were going to give that guy up, go against him for the next 5 years, and only get a year and a half out of Real Muto, man, things were not going to be pretty here in Philadelphia. So you got Alcantara, Sanchez, Lopez, Trevor Rogers down there. And that's where those 4 guys, I think they overperformed slightly last year. So I think they end up in the 5th spot. We just talked about how they added Florio from the Dodgers. You got Bass out there, Garcia, Hoyt, Holloway. I think just on paper, this Marlins team is still a year or 2 away from potentially being at that top tier. Jorge Alfaro behind the dish. Aguilar at first base, again, came over from Milwaukee. Second base, you got Berti. Third base, Anderson. Shortstop, Rojas. And then the outfield of Corey Dickerson, Starling Marte, and Lewis Brinson. They're a solid ball club. I mean, I don't think any of these teams are going to be bottom feeders when it comes to the National League. Even the 5th place Marlins, I think, could win 75, 80 games this year if some things break their way. Like in the West, you had the Rockies. In the Central, you have the Pirates. And both of those teams may be 60 and 100 this year for their record. I don't think anybody in the East is going to be quite to that level. But just from a pitching staff rotation, I think the Marlins and their youth, the longevity of 162, could be that final hurdle for these guys to get over. Because, again, very good in a sprint aspect of a couple of months. But once you start to extend Sanchez, extend Alcantara, how do they maintain and handle that length? And if they can continue to be successful. But 1 through 4 here, I manipulated probably 3 or 4 times. I mean, even Atlanta. They're 4th. No, they're 1st. No, they're 2nd. Where do I have these guys? And, truly, this is something I'm probably going to regret, but I have the Mets as the 4th place team in this division just for the fact that they're the New York Mets. And that's probably going to upset some people out there, but you Mets fans truly know deep down inside of you that you're the New York Mets. And this just seems to happen to the Mets. There's one of those things kind of unwritten about Mets fans, NL East fans, where it's like, the Mets are just going to Met. They're just going to do what they do. And I really think that the dysfunction in the front office, some turnover, yes, a new owner, a lot of positivity, but you hire a general manager, then you have to fire him a couple weeks later. Clearly, the culture and the program within the front office isn't to the point where you need it to be. You also have previous manager Mickey, being shunned for sexual allegations. Mickey Callaway out there now with LA, but he was in the front office. So I think there could be changes at the top coming, whether it's culturally, background, training, whatever it is, that could leak out onto the field. I get that sense and I get that feeling that things aren't comfortable in New York just yet. And yes, they added fantastic new pieces. If they would have added Trevor Bauer, I may have put him first on the list. I think Bauer may have that big of a difference because I think all these teams may finish within 5 games of each other in the National League. I think first place and 4th place may come down to the final week of the regular season. And this is very difficult to do just based on the rotation. Them and the Phillies, I have 3 and 4 right now. And honestly, I'm a Phillies fan, so that's probably why you're saying it. But the Mets are going to Met. But Jacob deGrom, probably going to win the Cy Young, one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Marcus Stroman's back after accepting his qualifying offer. And then Carlos Carrasco, very underrated big league pitcher. But you have those 3, and Carrasco is good, not great, in my opinion. Stroman, very good, not great. So you really only have one great arm when it comes to this rotation. And without getting Thor back potentially mid-season due to surgery, I don't want to predict when he will be back, how effective he will be. Now this bullpen, I like this bullpen. I like Diaz, who bounced back. Seth Lugo is going to need surgery. It was just pointed out he had loose bodies in his arm, so that's going to hurt them out in the bullpen. But they did add Trevor May. They have Familia out there. They have Betances coming back. Gesselman out there. Aaron Loop from the left side. So a solid bullpen out there. But I just think that staff is going to hold them back here ever so slightly. McCann behind the dish. Alonso at first. McNeil at second. J.D. Davis at third. Lindor at short. Very good offensive ball club. It'll be fascinating to see how much Lindor can add. In the outfield, Dominic Smith, Brandon Nimmo, Michael Conforto. So a very good ball club. Don't get me wrong again. I don't think they're bottom feeders at all. But again, the Mets, there's just something about them until they prove me wrong, right? Like the Patriots. You always bet that the Patriots are going to win the division until they don't. Even this year, I bet on them, and now they didn't. But until that happens, I'm just going to put the Mets down one spot lower than I think they should be. In third place, I got the Philadelphia Phillies. I can't put them all the way at the top, even though I want to, just due to the rotation. They got like 6 or 7 guys fighting for a rotation spot. Your top 3 of Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin, all solid big leaguers. Wheeler and Nola probably 1A, 1B. Neither of them a true ace, but still very, very good. Zach Eflin, much better now that he went back to that sinker ball style and got away from that high fastball type of philosophy that the previous pitching coach was trying to implement. Spencer Howard, their top pitching prospect, struggled during his introduction to the bigs, but I think that will help him learn some sabermetrics and what he needs to do to adjust moving forward. But again, there's probably going to be an innings limit on him, which is why they added Matt Moore back over from Japan. He was good over there. Can he find the success he found previously? Chase Anderson struggled last year, but has been good in years past. Is he going to be number 4 and number 5? So I think Moore and Anderson are your inside track to 4 or 5. You have Spencer Howard if you want to go 6-man rotation. I think they move Vince Velasquez to the bullpen or even have him as a trade piece during spring training. Keep an eye out on Vince Velasquez. If he throws the ball well, he could be on the move to another team. And then the bullpen. They took a ton of flyers on guys in the bullpen, but one thing that they put a lot of emphasis on was velocity, because they had guys who couldn't break a pane of glass last year in this bullpen, and obviously it was the historically worst bullpen ever. So adding Jose Alvarado, 100 miles an hour from the left side. Sam Conrad, 100 miles an hour from the right side. Connor Brogdon, high 90s, made his debut last year. Certainly going to figure things out. Archie Bradley, mid to high 90s, closer experience. Mix in Hector Neris, Jojo Romero, David Hale comes back, Ranger Suarez. And again, this team had a lead in 47 out of 60 games. So if they just had a bad bullpen and not a historically bad bullpen, they would have made the playoffs after missing by a game or two. And the offense, they bring everybody back. I mean, Real Muto behind the dish, best catcher in baseball. Rhys Hoskins at first base, extremely streaky, coming off a surgery. But if he can put together a nice campaign, he'll be an excellent bat in the middle of the lineup. At second base, you have Gene Segura, who's a professional hitter. Third base, Alec Baum, who almost won Rookie of the Year, should continue to develop, have a fantastic summer. If he hits the ball well, continues to develop that power stroke, he should put up some runs. Shortstop, you have D.D. Gregorius coming back, who showed pop from the left side. Really like that ballpark there in Philadelphia. Then in center field, I'm going Scott Kingery as your center fielder every day, backed up by Hazley and Quinn. Out in right, you have Bryce Harper, and out in left, you have Andrew McCutchen. So if McCutchen, another year removed from that knee surgery back in 2019, if he can get back to his old self, this offense is going to be loaded. The rotation's solid, and the bullpen is much improved. I think they're going to be flirting with that third place, second place spot here in the division. So the second place team, I have the Washington Nationals. I have these guys bouncing back. I mean, just looking at the rotation of Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, and Lester, I think is arguably the best one in the division. I just think that's a fantastic rotation. Now, that's what's going to carry them to second place. Maybe I have them at third, fourth, again, move up the Mets and the Phillies, second, third. You could interchange all these guys based on health and based on performance, but I like the addition of Brad Hand to the bullpen. You have Will Harris out there again. Daniel Hudson closing out games. Kyle Finnegan, Wander Serrero. So the top end of the bullpen, good. I don't like the depth in the Washington bullpen, but with the starters being able to go deep in games, I think they'll be able to figure it out. Offensively, Yan Gomes behind the dish. They traded for Josh Bell at first base to get a bit more pop over there. Second base, Josh Harris, Luis Garcia alternating that spot. Third base, Carter Kieboom as a nice upcoming piece. Trey Turner at shortstop. They added Kyle Schwarber to play left field. Victor Robles in center, and of course Juan Soto, who will be an MVP candidate out there in right field. So if the offense can contribute, the starters can stay healthy, because of course they missed Strasburg last year, but Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, Lester, I like that rotation 4 days out of the week there in Washington. And then in first place, I got to have the Braves. I mean, projections have them finishing fourth in the division, which I don't get, because this team was literally one game away from winning the National League, up 3-1 on the awesome Dodgers team. So I just think until somebody beats them, I got to put them up at the top. Now, the rotation on paper, not fantastic, but all these kids threw the ball well, and then they added veterans Drew Smyly and Charlie Morton to offset the new kids. I mean, Soraka, Fried, Anderson, and Wright were fantastic down the stretch and in the postseason. Now you add Morton and Smyly, you got a veteran presence there if anybody goes down. The bullpen here could be their downfall. Now, they lost Melanson here to the Padres, but Luke Jackson, Mintor, Matzik, Dayton, Yona, Smith, Martin, Wilson. This is the one area where I think they could find some trouble when it comes to Atlanta. So their pitching could be their downfall, and their offense continues to be solid. I mean, D.R. Known behind the dish, Freddie Freeman coming back MVP. First base, Ozzie Albies at second, Austin Riley at third, Dansby Swanson at short. Out in the outfield, you got Ozuna out there playing left field after he re-signs, Enciarte in center, and then Acuna Jr. out in right field. I mean, that lineup 1 through 9 is absolutely loaded. You got power bats, you got speed guys, you got double guys, home run guys. So offensively, I think they're the best in the division. I'd put the Phillies behind them, the Mets in third, Nationals fourth, Marlins fifth. Pitching staff-wise, I'd go Washington, then New York, then Philadelphia. But Atlanta, those kids, they were fantastic. So maybe they're in second place. It's just, man, what a chaotic division that I cannot figure out how to pin down. But I got the Marlins in last, the Mets in fourth, Phillies in third, Nationals in second, and Braves in first. And I'm sure a ton of you out there are going to disagree with me on that. So leave us a comment. Let me know your predictions and why I'm completely wrong with where I have my guys. But that'll do it for today's episode. That'll wrap things up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it once again. Monday, February 15th here. By Thursday, when I talk to you guys, we'll have some pitchers and catchers to talk about. And then we'll get into my playoff predictions, my playoff previews, and ultimately who's going to make the postseason, who's going to win it all. So that'll be a lot of fun. But enjoy your week out there, everybody. Check us out on social media. Like, rate, review, subscribe, whatever it is on any platform. Please do that to continue to help us grow. Enjoy your week out there, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. I'll talk to you guys on Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.